Why does the same hard sentence wound one person for a single afternoon and another for 10 years? It isn't the sentence, it's what happens after it lands, in the space most of us were never taught to manage. Maybe something recent shook you, that particular tightness in the chest when an ordinary day suddenly gives way. If so, you're not weak for feeling it, and you're in the right place. Welcome to Mindfulness, where we look at these moments honestly, without quick fixes. Today, we explore 6 habits drawn from genuine Buddhist teaching, practices that have quietly held people steady for over 2,000 years. We'll walk through each one slowly, in order, so every single one has room to actually change something. Stay through to the 6th. It's the one that ties the rest together. 1. Learn to see change before it sees you. The first habit is simple to say and hard to live. Notice that everything is moving. In the earliest Buddhist teachings, this is called anicca, impermanence. Not as a sad fact to be endured, but as a doorway to freedom. Every feeling you have ever had, the worst grief, the sharpest anger, the most wonderful joy, has already proven this law true. It arrived, it changed shape, it left. Nothing you have ever felt has stayed exactly the same for more than a few moments, no matter how convinced you were, in the middle of it, that it would last forever. Most suffering does not come from pain itself. It comes from the belief that this particular pain is permanent. The mind, caught inside a hard moment, quietly assumes that the walls of that moment are the walls of the world. It says, "This is how it will always be now," and that single unspoken sentence is often heavier than the actual event that triggered it. Here is the habit. When something painful arrives, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask a quieter question. What is this doing right now? Not what it means for tomorrow, not what it says about your life, just what it is doing in this exact moment. A feeling examined this closely almost always reveals its own motion. You will notice it shifting even as you watch it. The way weather shifts if you actually stand still and look at the sky instead of running for shelter. This does not mean forcing positivity onto pain. It means removing the extra weight of permanence from it. A storm is still a storm, but a storm you know will pass is different from a storm you believe will never end. The emotionally unbreakable person has not learned to feel less. They have simply stopped adding the sentence "forever" onto every hard thing that happens to them. Practice this the next time frustration or sadness rises. Name it plainly. This is anger. This is disappointment. Then remind yourself out loud if you need to, this too is moving. It will not hold its shape. You do not have to fix it or hurry it along. You only have to remember that it was never built to stay. 2. Find the root before you fight the branches. Most people spend their whole lives fighting symptoms. They treat the argument, not the resentment underneath it. They treat the anxiety, not the craving underneath it. The second habit comes from the very heart of Buddhist teaching found in the Four Noble Truths. Suffering exists, yes, but suffering has a cause, and that cause is called tanha, often translated as craving or thirst. This is not only craving for pleasure, it is the constant quiet insistence that things be different than they are. A craving for approval that makes silence feel like rejection. A craving for control that makes uncertainty feel like danger. A craving for things to stay the same that makes ordinary change feel like loss. Underneath almost every emotional wound, if you look closely enough, there is one of these quiet demands running in the background, unexamined, treated as simply how things are. The habit here is a kind of honest detective work. When you feel shaken, instead of asking what happened to me, ask what was I demanding from this moment. Did you need the other person to agree with you? Did you need the outcome to go a certain way? Did you need to be seen as capable or kind or right? 9 times out of 10, the actual pain is smaller than the collapse of the demand underneath it. This is not about becoming someone who wants nothing. Wanting things is part of being alive. The goal is to see your own wanting clearly enough that it no longer runs you from the shadows. A craving named loses much of its grip. A craving left in the dark grows roots into everything you do. Try this the next time you feel disturbed by something small. Pause and ask quietly, what did I want here that I didn't get? Sit with the honest answer, even if it is uncomfortable. You may notice the demand was never really about the situation at all, but about an old fear wearing a new face. Seeing this clearly is not weakness. It is the beginning of the very freedom the Buddha pointed toward when he taught that the end of craving is the end of suffering. 3. Build the small gap that changes everything. The third habit is the one most closely tied to modern mindfulness practice, and it may be the most practical thing you learn tonight. In the earliest Buddhist texts, this quality is called sati, usually translated as mindfulness, though the deeper meaning is closer to remembering to pay attention again and again on purpose. Without this habit, life happens like a chain reaction. Something is said, and a reply flies out before you've even decided to speak. Something goes wrong, and the whole body tightens before the mind has understood why. This is not weakness. It is simply how an untrained mind operates, reacting at the speed of old habit rather than the speed of clear seeing. The habit is to build a small gap between what happens and what you do about it, not a long pause, not a dramatic act of willpower, just enough space for one breath. In Buddhist practice, the breath is often used exactly for this purpose because it is the one thing always available, in any room, in any crisis, requiring no equipment and no permission from anyone else. When something sharp happens, before speaking, before deciding, before reaching for your phone or your usual escape, take one slow breath and simply notice. Notice the tightness in the chest or the heat rising in the face. Notice the urge to react. You do not have to stop the urge. You only have to see it before you obey it. This single act of noticing is what creates the gap. Inside that gap is the only real freedom any of us ever has. You cannot control what happens to you. You cannot fully control the first wave of feeling that rises. But inside that small breath of space, you can choose what happens next. Practiced daily, this gap grows wider without effort. The way a path through tall grass becomes clearer each time it is walked. This is how a person becomes someone who responds instead of someone who is simply pulled along by every gust of feeling that passes through them. 4. Turn your own heart into shelter. The fourth habit surprises people because it looks nothing like toughness. It is metta, usually translated as loving kindness, one of the 4 qualities the Buddhist tradition calls the Brahma Viharas, the sublime states of the heart. Many assume that emotional strength means hardening yourself against others. Buddhist teaching points in the opposite direction. The steadiest people are not the coldest. They are the ones who have deliberately cultivated warmth as a discipline, not left it to chance. Metta is not the same as simply being nice. It is a trained intention, practiced on purpose, that wishes well-being on yourself and others, regardless of how you feel toward them in a given moment. Traditionally, this practice begins with yourself. May I be safe. May I be at ease. May I be free from unnecessary suffering. This may feel strange at first, especially if you were raised, as many of us were, to believe that kindness toward yourself is somehow indulgent, or that self-criticism is what keeps a person disciplined and sharp. But a heart that cannot offer itself basic goodwill has very little steady ground to stand on when hard days come. You cannot pour warmth outward for long from a well that has never been allowed to fill. From there, the practice widens toward someone you love, where the feeling comes easily. Toward someone neutral, a stranger you pass without much thought, which stretches the heart slightly further. And eventually toward someone who has been difficult for you. This last step is not about excusing harm or pretending a wound does not matter. It is about refusing to let another person's actions determine the condition of your own heart for years afterward. Holding hostility toward someone costs you far more than it costs them, since you are the one carrying it through every ordinary day, long after they may have forgotten the moment entirely. There is something else this practice quietly does, beyond softening how you feel toward others. It changes what your mind reaches for by default. An untrained mind, left alone with a spare moment, tends to drift toward comparison, irritation, or old grievances, simply because those grooves have been worn deep by repetition. Metta gives the mind a different groove to fall into instead, one that has to be built the same way any habit is built, through repeated, unremarkable practice rather than a single moment of inspiration. The habit is small enough to practice anywhere, silently, while waiting in line, while walking, before sleep. Direct a simple wish of well-being toward yourself, then toward one other person. May you be well. May you be at ease. This is not a magic phrase. It is a repeated act of turning the heart deliberately toward warmth, instead of leaving it to default toward suspicion or self-criticism, which is where an untrained mind tends to drift on its own. Practiced consistently, this becomes less like an exercise and more like the actual temperature of how you move through the world, a shelter you carry with you rather than something you wait to receive from outside. 5. Stop defending a self that was never fixed. The fifth habit goes deeper than the others, and it takes some patience to sit with. Buddhist teaching offers a concept called anatta, often translated as non-self, which suggests that the fixed, solid, unchanging self we spend our whole lives defending was never quite as solid as we assumed. Think about how much emotional pain comes specifically from protecting an identity. I am the responsible one. I am someone who never fails. I am the strong one in my family. I am not someone who gets angry. Each of these labels feels like the truth, but they are really just habits of thought, repeated so often they came to feel like bedrock. And because they feel like bedrock, any moment that contradicts them, a failure, an angry outburst, a moment of weakness, feels like an earthquake rather than simply an event. This is where an enormous amount of unnecessary suffering hides. It is one thing to make a mistake. It is another thing entirely to experience that mistake as proof that your entire identity has collapsed. The event is small. The identity built on top of it is what makes the fall feel catastrophic. Buddhist teaching suggests that this fixed sense of self, the one we spend so much energy defending, is actually a process rather than a thing, more like a river than a stone. A river is still recognizably itself while constantly changing, made of different water every single moment, never once frozen into a fixed shape, and yet still a river. The habit here is to hold your own self-concept a little more loosely, not to abandon values or stop caring how you act, but to stop treating every single moment as a referendum on your entire worth. When you fail at something, instead of thinking, "This proves I am a failure," try noticing this was one action taken by a person who is still in motion, still changing, still becoming. You are not required to defend a fixed version of yourself against every piece of evidence that complicates it. You're allowed to simply be a person having a difficult moment, rather than a fixed identity under permanent threat. This single shift removes an enormous amount of pressure from daily life. Criticism stops feeling like an attack on your core because you no longer have a rigid core standing exposed and waiting to be struck. Instead, there is simply a flowing process, absorbing feedback, adjusting, continuing on. This is, in many ways, the quiet center of Buddhist psychology. Suffering clings most tightly not to events themselves, but to the fixed self we insist on placing directly in the path of every event. Loosen the grip on that fixed self, even slightly, and an enormous amount of unnecessary suffering has nowhere left to land. 6. Let the 8 winds blow without knocking you down. The 6th and final habit brings everything together, and it comes from a teaching found across Buddhist tradition known as the 8 worldly winds, or Lokadhamma. These are the 4 pairs of conditions that blow through every human life without exception. Gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute, pleasure and pain. No one, regardless of wisdom or wealth or effort, is exempt from all 8. They arrive uninvited throughout an ordinary life, sometimes multiple times in a single day. Most people are tossed around by these winds without ever noticing the pattern. Praised and suddenly walking taller, certain of their own worth. Criticized an hour later and suddenly collapsed, certain of the opposite. Gain a promotion and feel expanded. Lose something valuable and feel diminished. The winds keep blowing, and the untrained mind keeps rising and falling with each gust, mistaking every temporary weather pattern for a permanent verdict on a life. The habit taught here is called equanimity, or upekkha in the earliest Buddhist texts, considered the highest and most mature of the 4 sublime states of the heart. Equanimity is often misunderstood as indifference, as though the goal were to stop caring altogether. It is closer to the opposite. Equanimity means caring fully while remaining unshaken, feeling the full weight of gain or loss, praise or blame, without being swept away by any of it into a permanently altered sense of who you are. Picture a very old, very deeply rooted tree standing through a long season of storms. The wind moves through it. The branches bend, sometimes violently. Leaves are lost. But the trunk remains standing because its roots run deep beneath the surface, unmoved by whatever passes overhead. This is not because the tree does not feel the wind. It is because the tree's stability was never dependent on the wind stopping. The habit is to notice in real time when one of the 8 winds is blowing through your day, and to name it exactly as that. This is praise, this is loss, this is disrepute, this is gain. Naming the wind for what it is, rather than mistaking it for the whole weather system of your life, is often enough to loosen its grip. Ask yourself gently, will this still matter in this exact form a year from now? Most of the 8 winds, seen clearly, reveal themselves as passing gusts rather than permanent climates. This final habit does not remove the winds. Nothing can. Praise will still feel good. Loss will still hurt. But it gives you roots deep enough that no single gust, however strong, determines the entire shape of your life. This is, in the end, what it actually means to become emotionally unbreakable. Not a person who feels nothing, a person whose roots run deeper than whatever wind happens to be blowing through today. 6 habits, each one small enough to begin today. Seeing change clearly, finding the root beneath the reaction, building the gap that lets you choose, offering warmth on purpose, starting with yourself, holding your own identity a little more loosely, and standing rooted while the 8 winds move through, as they always will. None of this asks you to feel less. It only asks you to build something steady enough to hold what you feel. If even one of these habits stayed with you tonight, that is enough. Practice it gently and return to it often. May you walk from here a little more rooted and a little less shaken by whatever comes next.